Guys, I wanted to share with you some stuff I've been working on. I've been playing with something that Dave Pitts mentioned in a conversation a few weeks back around trying to enable us to put curves in place that control the value of an effect setting or whatever over the course of a particular effect. So what I want to show you is we'll start with a simple bars effect. Let's give it three colors, and it's just sliding up. So I want to go here to my layer settings, and you can see here's my blur, and as ever you can set the blur up and slowly blurs the effect, but it's constant, right? So for that entire duration it's going to blur by a factor of 4. What if we could change the amount of blur over time? So during this period of time that the effect's running, the amount of blurriness could change in some predictable way. So what I've done is I've added this new button here. When you click it, when it's currently not enabled, what happens is a dialog box pops up, and you'll notice it turns into a green background, which tells you, and it disables the actual slider and the text box, telling you that this thing's now in action. And so what we have here is a space where we can define a curve. You can view the left-hand side as being the beginning of the effect, the right-hand side being the end of the effect. 100 is full blurriness, and 0 is minimal blurriness. It actually has no correspondence to the actual value, which actually spans between 1 and 15. That's all handled behind the scenes. You have a couple of curve names. So this, the first one's the obvious one, flat. So here, this, to be honest, is actually no different than the blurriness setting down here. You just choose a value, you say it's flat, it's going to occur between these two time periods, and it's straight flat. You can choose a simple ramp. Here you get to choose a starting and an ending blurriness, and over the course of the effect it will change. A ramp up, ramp down. Here you get to, oh, there's a bug that shouldn't do that. So here you get to define 3 points on the curve, where the middle one's always the middle. So fairly simple. Ramp up, down, hold. So here a start level, which is also the end level, a mid level, which is how high it goes in the middle, and how long it stays flat for. So some simple settings there. The sawtooth. Sawtooth lets you decide how many times you want it to sawtooth, what you want the minimum to be, what you want the maximum to be. A parabolic down. So this one draws a downward parabola. You get to decide how deep it goes, and you also get to play with the slope of the parabola. You can't move it left and right. So to be honest, I imagine most people are going to choose something that's roughly like that if they were to use that, and then adjust how far up or down it is, something like that. Parabola up, which of course is exactly the opposite. Logarithmic up. This one here is kind of hard to define. But basically, it's hard to get a really good spread here. I could probably do a little bit better on that. There's a logarithmic down, which does exactly the reverse. It's odd. It's meant to be a vertical offset. I have to look at that. A sine. So the sine lets you define the number of cycles, the vertical offset. You can define the amplitude and the phasing, so where it starts, etc. That one's actually pretty cool. An absolute sine, which is kind of similar, except oh, what am I doing? What's that? Okay, some interesting things here. It worked differently when I ran it earlier. Okay, well, what this should be doing is doing sort of like humps along, so it takes the absolute value of the sine. Not quite sure why it's not showing an amplitude that's appropriate. Okay, that's weird. Um, and then if you've chosen something and produced a sine wave like this, you can go to custom, and when you go to custom, you can grab one of these points and move it up or down. You can only move it up or down. You can't move it left or right. But what you can do is you can pick any arbitrary point, click, and it will create a point if appropriate. You can press delete a point. You can press Control Z, and the point gets restored. This probably works a little bit better with something like a ramp. If you go from a ramp to custom, you can do things like you can say, actually, I want it to ramp up and then stay high. So you can pretty much do almost anything you'd want to do um, in custom over time. So what does this look like? Well, okay, so here we've got something that's going to start with no blur, that's going to proceed up to a lot of blur, slowly unblur, and then reblur again at the end. So we click OK there, and there you see it. Really blurs, unblurs. It's probably rendering. My machine can be a little slow at times. Yeah, there it goes. Unblurs very, very slowly, and then reblurs quickly. So now you have a blur effect that is actually not driven constant over the period of time, but we can add that extra dimension. Now, in theory, we could apply this to a lot of different things. Oh, sorry, I'm gonna do that. So here, you probably couldn't change cycles or palette repetition. That wouldn't make a hell of a lot of sense on a bars effect. But you might choose, for instance, to do a fire effect and maybe change the height and do that differently, so you can control manually it, or even the hue shift. In theory, you could change that over time. So it's a pretty powerful concept. Obviously, probably the most obvious place for it is down here on the brightness. Well, I'm sure. Oh, sorry. Is this our brightness curve? Not sure where brightness is, but things like controlling the brightness of an effect, you could do fades in and fades out over the course of time using the curve. So I think it offers some interesting possibilities. The way the code's written, most of it's reusable. Obviously, you need to throw the UI element in. I've actually defined a derived bitmap button which has all the logic around displaying the icon and showing the right bitmap at the right time and all of that sort of stuff. You obviously have to wire in the enabling and disabling of the controls around it. The dialog that pops up, notice when you click on it the next time it disables, and then when you click it again it enables and the dialog pops up. So all of this dialog here is entirely reusable. You will need to wire all of the data saving and everything in so that it turns up properly inside the file. If I save this, let's call it AAA. So if I save this, great. What you find is this is how it comes out. It sets this value curve equals, I'm not sure if this is the most advisable way it does it. So that's obviously the setting. And then this is all the data that corresponds with the value curve. Down the end here, this data here is all the manually set data. That only appears if you happen to have chosen manually setting. And then there's the comma eventually, and obviously all the rest of the settings. So I think that will be okay. I don't think that will cause us any problems. It obviously does add a bit of data, but this data only appears here if you happen to have chosen to use one of the value curves. If I was to go back and disable the value curve by clicking it again, and this thing gets re-enabled, and if I resave it, And if I go back to the file, oh, it didn't go away. Well, it should go away, so I might have to go back and look at that as well. Because yeah, there's no reason for it to save that in that circumstance. So look, I don't know. Happy for any feedback on the way I've chosen to do the UI. Or anything else. I think it has some interesting possibilities on some effects. It'll add an extra dimension to some things, potentially save people from having to put multiple effects over time. They can just play with a setting during the time that the effect's shown. So yeah, look, if you've got anything you want to send me, please do. Cheers, guys.